Hello and thank you for joining today's findBIOMETRICS webinar. The webinar will last for 45 minutes and will be moderated by John Mears from Lockheed Martin. John will introduce the topic and then our three panelists will present for 10 minutes each. At the end, we will answer any questions that have been submitted. To ask a question, just type it into the dialog box in your go-to control panel on the right side and submit. We will do our best to answer all questions at the end of the session. And I'd now like to introduce our moderator. We are very pleased to have John Mears from Lockheed Martin leading our presentation today. John is the Director of Biometric Solutions for the Security and Citizen Protection line of business within the Lockheed Martin IS and GS Civil Operating Unit. In this position, he is responsible for program performance, segment strategy, and technology plans for biometric identification and verification applications across the major market segments. He has run cross-corporate biometric task force as chairman since 2006. Major program responsibilities for John include the Transportation Workers Identification Credential Program, TWIC, for the TSA, and the FBI's Card Scanning Service Program. Welcome, John. Over to you.
Thank you, Peter. I think the appropriate salutation is good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Our topic this morning is interoperability at the intersection of policy and public perception. This sounds straightforward enough, but let me give you a little background on how this topic came forward. As an advocate for the effective use of biometrics, I had been thinking about what it's going to take to get biometrics to the next level of effectiveness worldwide. Like many of you in the audience, I've sat through innumerable conference sessions on standards and technical interoperability. I've engaged in the open versus closed system, raw versus template debates. And even though I'm a technologist at heart, I know there are many technical challenges. I've become convinced through these discussions that taking biometrics to the next level isn't dependent as much on standards and technology or technical interoperability as it is on policy, law, and the public perception that drives the acceptable uses of biometrics. I cite as inspiration for this idea several people, including our panelists this morning. At this last fall's London Biometrics Conference, Maxine Most led a brainstorming session to attack this question of what it'll take to move to the next level. She advocated a concept called niche picking for industry participants, finding parts of the market that could be well served by individual technologies and drilling deep to cultivate the segments. 2 years ago at this same conference, I heard one of our panelists today, Mr. Mark Branchflower, speak of the challenges of national interoperability from an Interpol perspective. More recently, I've had the opportunity to engage with Mr. Jim Loudermilk on the policy and law evolution necessary to fully benefit from emerging rapid DNA identification technologies. This is a case where the technology is moving faster than policy is changing or legal precedents can be established. And then, for example, there are gaps in public knowledge and aberrations in perception with regard to what taking a DNA fingerprint actually means. Today, we have the unique opportunity to explore what it will take to engage these challenges from the perspectives of three distinguished members of the world's law enforcement community. Their jurisdictions allow us to do a Google Zoom, if you will, from the local level to the national level to the international level, benefiting from their experience on each level. We have Second Lieutenant Alan Hanson from Novaris, the Northern Virginia Regional Identification System in the Washington, D.C. area, to give the local perspective. We have Mr. Jim Loudermilk of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation to give a national perspective. And we have Mr. Mark Branchflower of Interpol to give an international perspective. And I'll introduce each one just before they speak. First, let me introduce Alan. With 16 years of experience at the Fairfax County Police Department, Second Lieutenant Hanson served until recently as the Director of the Northern Virginia Regional Identification System, or Novaris, and currently serves as chairman of the National Capital Region Biometrics Governance Board, where he's responsible for managing the budget, identifying new technology and technology gaps in the region, and ensuring the successful operation and integration of the National Capital Region's Automated Fingerprint Identification System, or AFIS. The National Capital Region APHIS is comprised of 3 separate regional APHIS systems which share information to enable identifications across local and state boundaries. And Alan is also responsible for the direction of the region's mobile APHIS and facial recognition systems. Alan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, John, and thank you, Peter, for allowing me to be a part of this event. I guess we'll start with just kind of the snapshot of the screen that we have here, just to describe the National Capital Region. DC, which you'll see is the diamond in the center here, is bordered by Maryland to the north and Virginia to the south and to the west. So this region, it obviously comprises 2 different states and the District of Columbia, which presented some information sharing challenges. To address those, what was done in the, well, let me begin. RAPHIS, which the regional APHIS system for Montgomery County and Prince George's County in Maryland, was formed in the late 1970s. In the early 1980s, the DC APHIS system went online. And at that point, a discussion came about in the Police Chiefs Committee at the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments to discuss the possibility of information sharing between these systems. In July of that year, a resolution of 1982, a resolution was adopted by COG to support the regional concept and to endorse the implementation of this. As a result of this, the Northern Virginia Regional Identification System came into being, and shortly thereafter, in February of 1985, MOU was signed between RAPHIS, DC APHIS, and Novaris to share information, APHIS information. What began this discussion was or what kind of helped work through the discussion was the provisions of mutual aid which applied to each jurisdiction, which allowed each to share vital information such as criminal information. So that allowed for the connection. The regional APHIS, as was explained before, not only incorporates fingerprints, but has since incorporated facial recognition and mobile APHIS into the environment. So this next slide, I'm sorry I passed by it, is a snapshot of the regional APHIS network. Each site is an APHIS system on its own. So you see the PG and Montgomery County APHIS, the DC Metro APHIS, and Novaris APHIS operate independently, but they can share information through VPN, virtual private network connections. So, and then each of the state systems also connect and feed information to the FBI APHIS system. As we've gone on, we've come to see some of the gaps that have existed in the region as far as information sharing, as far as use of equipment. And so what we began to look at was a way to actually focus regional collaboration towards this end. And so in the fall of 2009, we began to more formalize this association with the development of the National Capital Region Biometrics Governance Board. The Governance Board, while also helping to address regional collaboration or purchasing, also helps to guide the direction of technology in the region. We want to make sure that everyone in the region is advancing in the same direction. Some issues we encountered when we were a little more loosely connected was that different agencies would go out on their own to identify different biometrics. Maybe it's iris or some other mugshot type facial recognition system. And those systems wouldn't connect easily and wouldn't be interoperable with other people in the region. So we wanted to make sure that anybody who had an interest in biometrics in the region had a place to come to discuss the different technologies they were looking at and a way to vet the technologies to determine whether they were a good fit not only for them but for the region. And so once this board was established, we started to develop the users groups that would actually begin to vet these different biometrics. Again, the board is comprised of the chief of each agency or their designee, And the users groups that we're actually forming right now are meant to really look deeply at the gaps in the system, or how the system operates, and whether improvements can be made for the next edition. We also discuss information sharing policies. We're looking at IRIS for the next generation of biometric for information sharing, and so we're gathering together to discuss what information we will be sharing. And we're looking at the IRIS as being just another form of mobile APHIS type sharing, which we've been doing in the region for the last 3 or 4 years. So there will be the biometric, which will be the IRIS, which will be attached to certain demographic information that can be shared among all people in the region. And as law enforcement agencies, the collection of this information is tied specifically to an arrest. So the arrestee, their information would be entered in the local system, and thereafter could be shared then among other law enforcement agencies. So that's how we designed our system. I think I'll turn it back to you for now, John, and we'll go back to questions if you have any at the end.
Thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate your giving us the local perspective. What I think I want to do at this point is introduce Mr. Jim Loudermilk and give you a little bit of background on his illustrious career. Jim is the senior level technologist in the FBI Science and Technology branch. He's leading the FBI's Rapid DNA initiative. He entered duty on July 1996 as the FBI's first senior level employee, and the FBI executive responsible for design, development, installation, and transition to operations of the integrated automated fingerprint verification system, representing a $640 million investment to revitalize FBI in identification technology. Now, before Jim speaks, I'm going to turn it back over to Peter for just a minute. We're going to take a poll of the audience to get your diverse perspectives on this topic. And by doing it at this point, we can have the results tabulated for you by the time the speakers finish today. So before we move to Jim, we'll just go ahead and have that poll. Peter?
Thanks, John. And so you can see in front of you a selection of choices to answer the polling question. If you could just take a minute right now and select your answer, we will then tabulate the results and provide the answer to this poll at the end of our session. So if you could answer the question now, and we will have this back to you at the end of the session. So which area do you feel has the greatest promise to take biometrics to the next level? Please select your answer, and we will get the information back to you at the end of the session. We'll just give you a moment to do so. And I'm going to close the poll now. Back to you, John.
Okay. Just a moment. I'll hand off to James.
You that are with us online. I'm going to spend a couple of moments figuring out how to use the slides, going through the FBI's biometric program, and then get into trying to address the couple of topics that we have. As you'll see from the busy slide in front of you, the FBI has a fairly long legacy of involvement with the biometric program, beginning in 1924 when we took responsibility for the national fingerprint system, and leading on up to the present, involving DNA and various types of DNA, facial identification, voice identification. I won't attempt to take you through this very busy slide, but we'll instead just tell you we have two strategic themes with our biometric program. One, knowing your person and knowing that person based upon positive identification using a biometric, and then sharing the information between the various parties that are authorized by law and policy to have that information. We believe that for our purposes, and I'll come back to that for our purposes concept later, that there are two mature biometrics, namely fingerprints and DNA. And when I say fingerprints, I really mean the whole set of friction ridges, the rolled 10 print, flat prints, palm prints, writer's palms, and occasionally footprints as well. But we need considerably more than that. We need facial identification, scars, marks, tattoos, voice, iris, several other modalities to be mature capabilities for our purposes. And our purposes involve very large databases. I'm going to talk a little bit about DNA and then about fingerprints. We believe we have the world's largest DNA database with more than 8.2 million subject profiles on file and over 300,000 violent crime scene forensic profiles on file. This modality has flashed across the law enforcement consciousness much more quickly than any of the other forensic techniques or the biometric modalities. The basic science was discovered 57 years ago, the enabling technology 27 years ago. That DNA allowed unique identification of individuals has only been known for 26 years. A couple of key players and a very high-profile crime led to DNA seizing the public consciousness. And we began to operate our national system in the early 1990s, really only a decade after it was known that you could uniquely identify people with DNA. The fingerprint program, on the other hand, has a much longer legacy than that. Beginning for law enforcement around the early 1900s and arriving at the FBI in 1924, we believe that we've got the largest fingerprint repository in the world. Now, we have 65 million criminal subjects on file and another 26 million civil subjects on file, so roughly 91 million people, and this information is as of a couple of months ago, so it's higher than that now. There are systems, the Homeland Security U.S. Visit System has 110 million people on file, but no one else has 5.6 billion finger images on file. So very important modality that we've been at for a very long time. Technology insertion is essential to operate these large repositories, and in the pictures you see some from well before there were computers. And two different generations of supercomputers in the bottom. So technology is important, but it's not everything. It's not even the most important thing. Operational concepts, experience, training of personnel is even more important. And I show you a couple of images to make that point. On the left, you see One Nation's biometric repository, which is fingerprints. What you see is a table full of rubber-banded fingerprint cards stacked in no particular order, and basically this collection is useless for any practical purpose. In the middle, a well-organized manual system. It's our belief that manual systems are, in general, only workable up to 100,000 subjects. But on the right, to make the point that exceptional process and organization gives different capabilities, you see the FBI operations in 43 and the Washington, D.C. National Guard Armory, where we were operating the National Fingerprint Collection with about 20 million subjects. So turning then to what information we can share, there are a lot of different biometric modalities, and my claim is that there is no one unique best modality, that they're best based upon the application that you're using them in. And each of us that's engaged in this professionally tends to fall into the mental trap of believing that what we're doing is the only modality, the only area of interest. In my case, positive identification with really large repositories. That's a great deal different than access control. It's a great deal different than prisoner transfer. Many different applications that others are just as interested in as I am in mind. There are many different ways that we can use biometrics to identify ourselves. First generation biometrics, from friction ridges to irises to gait and even foot dynamics. Second generation biometrics that are starting to emerge include skin luminescence, a number of different electrophysiological measurements, even body odor. It's turning out that it's possible to replicate the performance of a dog's nose with technology, although I'm not sure how soon that we'll integrate that into any of the FBI operational systems. An interesting way of looking at this is to look at notional accuracy of the various modalities as a function of distance. And the chart I'm showing you is from our state-of-the-art Biometrics Excellence Roadmap, which is published in our Biometrics Center of Excellence website. And it's in 3 volumes for anyone who's interested in looking at it. It's all publicly available. So how can we share information? What information can we share? For the federal government, there are a lot of constraints on sharing U.S. persons data, primarily arising from the Privacy Act of 1974. Our subjects, including all of our criminal subjects, have privacy rights, and even though most of the information that we have on them originally arises in the public domain, once it goes into federal databases, it is no longer public information. It has to be shared according to law and according to policy. We have a collaboration process that we've had in place for many years for sharing criminal justice information. I won't take you through the nuances of this. And a more recent process for sharing the civil use of our information, which is actually codified in law and published in the Federal Register, where representatives of the states actually set the regulations for the civil use of the information in the FBI-operated systems. And more recently, we're addressing the international exchange of information where the various parties retain control over their own information and expose individuals whose information they are willing to share. So I think that's my contribution for this morning to this discussion, other than perhaps later to answer questions. I will pass it back to John Mears.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate very much the national perspective here. Let me introduce next Mr. Mark Branchflower. He joined New Scotland Yard Fingerprint branch in England in 1984 as a trainee fingerprint officer. And after qualifying as a fingerprint expert in 1989, Mark left the UK and in 1990 became a fingerprint officer with Interpol at its headquarters in Lyon, France. Since 1990, he's participated in many Interpol European and international working groups on fingerprint standards, AFIS, training, and DNA, and he's currently head of the fingerprint units, and in which case his main duties are the organization of Interpol fingerprint AFIS services, organization of meetings and conferences, and identification projects. And currently Mr. Branchflower is involved in several projects concerning the exchange of fingerprint information between Interpol member countries and increasing the database size of Interpol AFIS services. And as I said at the top of this, Mark was one of the original inspirations for this topic for me. So let me give control over to Mark. And Mark, take it away.
Thank you very much, John and Peter. I hope everybody can hear me. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. This is the first time I've ever participated in one of these webinars, and so far it's going fantastic. I was just thinking, normally if I was making this presentation at this time of day in Lyon to 170 people, I'd probably be looking at least 20 people that would be jet-lagged and falling asleep. So it's great to be able to just talk and present some of the work of Interpol. Before I go actually into the Interpol databases, I'd just like to mention that Interpol is the world's largest international police organization. We have 188 member countries, and our aim is to facilitate cross-border police cooperation and to assist all organizations, authorities whose mission is to prevent and combat crime. We do that by having a bureau in each of those 188 member countries. We also have 7 regional offices who we work with, and they are then responsible more for the actual daily work with their local national central bureaus. So it's a very large organization, spread obviously all over the world. We have roughly 600 employees here in Interpol. And one thing I just would like to mention before I go on to that is just to mention our annual budget. Something people think Interpol is extremely rich and very well financed, but I was just looking recently, and the budget for 2010 is 48.6 million euros, which is, when you look at what we're trying to do and the area we're in, is quite a sort of small amount of money. So now if I go on, hopefully let me click here. Okay, so what I want to show with this slide is some of the databases that we actually run at the moment. In the actual forensic area, biometrics, we have the Fingerprint database and the DNA database. We are looking at implementing facial matching, but that is something that is a project at the moment. The other databases that we have which work very, very well, and one I'm going to use towards the end of this presentation, is the stolen and lost travel documents. Now that is a database which has in excess of 14 million documents in it and could be accessed directly from point of entry in most of the member countries. We have many, many countries that every time a person presents a passport entering the country or leaving the country, that is controlled and checks against that database of stolen and lost travel documents. We have a child abuse image database, very, very secure, limited number of people using that. We have the stolen motor vehicles database, which again has large amounts of information on cars that have been stolen, and again is accessible by all of these 188 member countries.
Hey, Mark, please excuse me for a moment. This is John. Could you just speak up a little bit? We're getting just a couple of folks that can't hear you very well. If you could just speak up, that's great.
Hopefully that's closer. So as I said, I won't go back over what I've mentioned, but just to go on now with the, then we have a wanted file, which contains in excess of 50,000 people that are fugitives, that countries have actually put out notices. We have what's called the red notice, which is an international alert. We have various other notices as well. Then we have a nominal database which contains roughly 200,000 names of persons. The fingerprint database currently holds 106,000 fingerprints. Now that sounds not a lot when we're talking about an international database, but what our aim is we want to increase the size of that database, but what we don't want to really do is to just duplicate it with information that is already available in other member countries. So what we're trying to do as well is share our data with other member countries. So we're actually doing data set matches with many countries. But again, we need to have in this fingerprint database what we believe is the hot data, which is the fugitives, the people that countries are really looking for. And that's something we want to do. And again, the DNA database has a slightly lower number of people, but it is in a similar sort of area. And again, the DNA is working very, very good here. We've had lots of hits. And just to say that last year with this small database, 106,000, we actually made 1,000 identifications, 10-print last year. What issues we're seeing, and it's going to be interesting to see the results of your poll, because I think standards are an issue, IT is an issue, and all these, there's many, many things that are an issue for the exchange of data. And obviously, fingerprints is one of the ones where we're really struggling to actually get fingerprints sent quite often to us. We're still rejecting in excess of 15% of data that is sent to us because it's poor quality, scanned JPEG images and this sort of thing. So we're really pushing for, and we've taken NIST. Interpol has created its own implementation of the NIST standard, which has been adopted by all the member countries, and that is what we use now for the exchange of fingerprints to and from all those member countries. This year we're actually implementing, and we're putting in place in every bureau a software which will enable a country to scan a paper set of fingerprints, convert it into a NIST file to be sent to us. We're providing every person that has access to the Interpol I-247 secure network with a NIST viewer free of charge, and currently we've over 1,000 of those have been downloaded. So with the fingerprints, we're really sort of pushing forward, and we're using the NIST standard for that. And just last week, to mention one issue with Bahrain, we did a test where from our office here, we were able to send NIST files into Bahrain AFIS search, and Bahrain have been able to do the same with us. So these are sort of things we're trying to develop as well. It's actually going AFIS to AFIS. Again, with our budget, it's quite difficult sometimes to do a lot of these things, but that is the area. And I think what I want to say here is that there is quite a lot of international data exchange. However, it really needs to be developed. There is so much more information that needs to be sent around and matched in member countries. What we're asking countries to send us is the fingerprints from nationals, non-nationals that they arrest in their country, and nationals suspected of transnational crime. Now, we could look at, especially with the US, if the US started doing that with us, we'd be completely submerged within one day. We wouldn't be able to cope with that amount of data. So what we do with a large country like that, we actually provide our data to be checked against their national database. And the other area where we're hoping to develop is the crime scene marks. We're now doing some data sets from various countries, and again, quite a bit of success has been going on with this. I'm going to go over now to show some of the success that we've been having. You can see this is a chart to show the change in the evolution in the 10 prints that have been added to our database. What we can see here is Europe in 2008 was the massive contributor to this database. 80% of data was coming from Europe, and basically all the hits, everything was European based. What we've been trying to do is to get the other member countries from other regions to send more fingerprints, and you can see that the Americas and Africa have increased quite considerably in this 2009, and in 2010 we're seeing the same change. We're still struggling with the Middle East and with Asia, and we hope to do some promotion there this year to try to develop in North Africa, Middle East, and especially Africa. We're seeing that we've got a few countries who have APIS, are willing to send the data. Many countries there have manual databases, so we're still struggling to get fingerprints from them. But we're hoping, obviously, with the project we're putting in for the scanning of fingerprints, things will develop there. But what is interesting is that even though Europe has gone to 66%, that does not mean that they're sending us less fingerprints. They're actually sending us more fingerprints than they were in 2008. And what is great is obviously the other areas are sending more data as well. So we are seeing the system being used more and more. And we're currently putting in place a new APIS system, which will be able to handle more data and give much more automated replies. And this is what we're seeing is countries want a quick reply. And unfortunately, up until the last sort of few years, we've not been able to give that. Now we're looking forward to giving, hopefully, a reply on at least in 10 minutes to any member country sending in a fingerprint search. Now this is to show, and I'm going to talk about this, it's called the Pink Panthers. It's something that Interpol has had a project for the last few years, concentrating on a group of about 100, 150 people who do high-value jewelry store robberies. They're very, very organized and very, very quick, and they get away with multi-million euro thefts. Unfortunately, this was in a PowerPoint, and it should go through, but if you start in the top left-hand corner, you can see the two men that have come into the store. One of them has pulled a gun out of a newspaper. This was in Monaco. He's left the newspaper. A crime scene mark was detected, was sent to Interpol, and a hit was made against this person who was wanted by, you can see the other 4 countries here for fraud and robbery, attempted murder, and forgery. I'm now going to go on to the next slide, which will show, again, this group. It's just to show that if the countries were not submitting this data, these people would still be living quite happily anywhere in the world. But because we've got key countries who are affected by these by these jewelry store robberies, sending us the crime scene marks, sending us the DNA. We've had very good DNA hits as well with these are not just fingerprint hits, these are DNA hits as well, some of these. And only 2 weeks ago, we had a person arrested in Montenegro with a passport with identity, and that identity was searched and hit against a file here. Again, the fingerprint comparison was made, and we were able to say that the person arrested is not actually the one you're looking for. However, it is his accomplice, and we were able to do that. So we're seeing that these people are more and more of them being arrested due to fingerprints and DNA. Now, we're talking about how biometrics are going to change, and I'd like to see, based now on this stolen travel documents, which is actually at the border control, I'd like to see fingerprints really getting out to border control. I think that is where we really need to be concentrating in the future, especially Interpol. I think that's where we need to be concentrating. We're seeing now with the Homeland Security in the US with Japan, with verification of persons by fingerprints coming into the country. That is where we're making quite a lot of success with our fingerprint records. So, and this is just to show this was, again, another Pink Panther person. He was arrested in March 2009 with a forged passport in Cyprus. However, it still took 4 days for the fingerprints to be sent to us for us to say, well, actually the person you've got, the passport is forged, but also the person you have is this person that is wanted by Japan for armed jewelry store. So again, this shows that if we were able to do the fingerprint match at the border control, that person could have been identified much quicker. Again, this is another person who was traveling again with a travel document stolen. And as you can see here, over 100 border crosses were done with that travel document. He was actually controlled leaving. He left Africa. He was transiting through Paris on his way to Argentina, and it was due to the passport check in Paris that it was detected that this person had a false passport. Subsequent person was fingerprinted. We searched the fingerprints here, and we're able to say that actually the person you have there is this person wanted in Spain for, he was involved in a 600 kilos cocaine trafficking. He's been suspected in other crimes in Africa, and also he's a suspected war crimes person. And again, with this person, he has altered his fingerprint images as well. So that was quite difficult, but we were able to do it on the second flange to make the identification. But you can see that there are many people. We're not talking millions of people. We're talking probably hundreds, thousands, that are actually really very dangerous and are traveling quite freely around the world without any real sort of control on them. So I think we've seen with this border control, the travel documents is a great success. If we could actually get fingerprints now into that, I'm sure we'd be seeing more and more identifications being made. I was recently in the Seychelles, where we're hoping to put in this system, and we're really looking at an awful lot of people. There are countries where people like to go, especially criminals, because it's quite easy to move around there. It's quite easy to get into the country. So we're really trying to concentrate on sort of getting this information, tools into those countries. This is going to be my last slide now, and again, it's normally a PowerPoint, so we go through it quite slowly. But again, this is based on an issue where the big issue we're seeing now is because certain data is getting to border controls, but not fingerprints, we're going to get some false hits, and also we're going to get cases where the person that should be stopped is actually getting through. We're doing name checks at the airports, sometimes now fingerprint checks. And this was a case recently we had where a person left Canada on his way to Mexico on holiday. The person was controlled at the airport. Nothing wrong with the passport. However, name, all the details corresponded to a paedophile wanted by another member country. That member country had submitted fingerprints to us. However, they'd sent us a JPEG image at 100 dots per inch, so we were unable to put it into the database. So, and unfortunately what happened then, because the country said, well, we can't verify if it is this person or not, the person spent 14 hours in the airport and was sent back on the next plane. Now, if we look on the right, it's a similar situation. Obviously, quite often it's going to be on the passport or on the name check that the first check is done. The alert would have been made. Now, if we'd have had fingerprints available for that person, we could have had, again, two opportunities. There is the no hit. That means then the person would carry on through and, as you can see, have a nice holiday. Or it would be a hit, and the verification could be done, and that person could actually be captured and then taken into custody. So that is, for me, I think fingerprints can be quite easily exchanged throughout the world, respecting the INT Interpol standard of the ANSI NIST. We're seeing that they are being done. I think we need to see that more searching is done internationally. But also we need to be looking, this is, for me, is the aim, we really need to be looking at getting fingerprints into border control. So thank you very much for an Interpol participator in this session. I hope this presentation has been of use, and I look forward to any questions that will be coming later on. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope of the 170 people there, nobody's fallen asleep. Thank you very much.
We're all very much awake, Mark. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. Now, as Mark said, one of the things that we'll do at this point is go into just a few quick questions. We've got a number of questions from the audience, and actually, Mark, you mentioned the JPEG image that was 1,000 PPI, excuse me, 100 PPI, that you had difficulty with. You had difficulty with that. One of the questions, interestingly enough, that came from the audience was, does Interpol's APHIS accept 1,000 PPI finger and palm print images?
At the moment, it doesn't. The new system will accept 1,000 PPI. We'll actually receive it as 1,000, but we'll actually convert it to, it'll go in as a 500, and we'll actually continue to send out to member countries 500 DPI images. Okay.
And then another question, quick question for Jim. Jim and I are going to pass the microphone here, so just give us a second for transition. But is next generation identification looking at iris yet?
Well, iris is certainly going to be part of next generation identification, but no, we haven't begun the trade study on iris yet, and probably won't for another year. So that's a little bit ahead into the future. And I have another question. Where do you see digital palm prints and writers' prints in the future? I see that primarily for forensic identification. In the case of the United States, we deal with over 18,000 law enforcement organizations, and in fact last year we received identification tinprint requests from over 24,000 different locations. To introduce a new modality for positive identification is a fairly daunting challenge for all the organizations that would need to add it in. Fingerprints have the benefit of having been in place for a very long time, and it's possible to operate it essentially with no equipment. We still have lots of small jurisdictions in the United States using rolled ink. So we'll be introducing palm prints at the federal level. We're a little slow in doing that. A number of major cities in the United States have palm print systems and find that the crime scene latents, about 40% of the latent prints they recover are palm print latents. Japan has a national palm print system. Other countries have national palm print systems, use it to great effect. We expect that we will as well. I think that's my questions. I'll put this back to John.
Thank you, Jim. For Alan, in what format and resolution are facial images stored in the National Capital Region APHIS system? And are these facial images used for automatic matching and recognition outside of the NCR APHIS?
Thank you, John. Unfortunately, I don't have the technical specs on that, but there are basic mugshot images that are taken, when the person is arrested. Fingerprints are taken at the same time, and they're stored in the mugshot database. As far as matching goes, we've had success with very low res, like 1 megapixel, 1.3 megapixel images being searched against the database. We actually had a success in Montgomery County for a home invasion robbery where a low res image was taken during that robbery of a suspect, and that image was used against the system, and it came back with actually one of the suspects, and that suspect, identification of that suspect led to the arrest of 6 other suspects involved in that robbery.
Thank you, Alan. Peter, do we have time for any more questions, or do we have to wrap it up at this point?
I think we should probably wrap it up, and so let me just say that there were a couple of questions also about a recorded copy of this presentation. Yes, there will be available on our site at findbiometrics.com. And now let's take a look at the poll results. And as you can see, technical interoperability was chosen as the area that has the greatest promise to take biometrics to the next level. John, just a quick comment from you. Did these results surprise you at all?
A little bit. As a technologist, I tend to think that we can solve most technical interoperability problems. And in working in the rapid DNA area in particular, I can see the technology advancing out ahead of policy and law. And so there's a particular observation I would make about that, and that's the technology and the technology of interoperability with respect to sharing DNA data will probably outstrip policy and law. And I know in that particular case that's the case. That's not to say there aren't deep technical problems elsewhere. But a lot of times what we encounter most is just a barrier to sharing of information between agencies, between countries. Certainly Mark's discussion would highlight that on the international level.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to now thank all attendees for participating in today's webinar. I'd also like to thank our panelists, and a special thanks to John Mears for moderating today's discussion. We look forward to inviting you to our next webinar. This now brings to a close our webinar. Thank you.